Okay, the one and only video. Once I get through this sheet, these two problems and the one on the back, once you understand what you're doing in this packet, you can go ahead and work ahead. You don't have to do all the examples. So, we have a polynomial here, negative 3x to the second plus 4x plus 6, and then the operation is plus, and then 6x to the second plus 11x minus 7. So it's a plus. So if I have a plus or a minus operator, I want to draw out my blank x. Okay, I don't need to do any of this crap over here, okay, because there's no multiplication operations I need to worry about. Now I have x second, x first, and nothing, then x second, x first, and then nothing. So x second is the highest, plus blank x plus blank. Now, in the first blank, I'm on the hunt for x to the second power, and I have the negative right here and right here. So we're going to add those. So I take negative 3 plus positive 6. That's 3. So I'll have 3x to the second, then we can cross those out. And then for x, well, I'm just looking for x's that don't even have a power, so I have right here positive 4x and positive 11x. So it's 4 plus 11. That's 15. So we have 15x. Now we cross those out. Then for numbers without x, I have a positive 6 and negative 7. So I add 6 plus negative 7. I get negative 1. Okay, and that's the answer. 3x to the second plus 15x plus negative 1. Now in the next one, I have a subtraction operation. So it's the same idea. I have x blank x, but I have it x to the third, x second, and x, and then x second, and x. So x to the third is the highest. So blank x third plus blank x to the second plus blank x plus blank. Okay. So I'm in the hunt for x to the third. So I have the negative 6x to the third here. And then I don't have any x to the thirds here. So I just have negative 6 minus and then 0. That's negative 6. So negative 6 is my x to the third, and we can cross that out. So x to the second, I have 4 and then 4. So I'm going to be taking 4 minus 4. Okay, that's 0. So if I get a 0, I can just go ahead and eliminate that term from the expression. Okay, and then cross those out. And then regular x, I have 3 and negative 3. So I'm going to be taking 3 minus negative 3. I got 6, okay, because minus negative is like plus. It's like, this is like plus 3 plus 3. So I get 6. Now we can cross those out. And then for constants, I don't have anything here, so I enter that in as a 0. And then minus negative 7. So minus negative 7. This is like 0 plus 7, which is 7. Okay, and that's my answer. Now on the back side, this is kind of what we did yesterday. So I don't see an operation outside the parentheses, so it's a times. So I need to start drawing rainbows. Okay, so I got 5 to 3, 5 to 2, and then 5 to negative 5. So I drew 3 rainbows, 3 of them. So I'm going to write that 5x to the second 3 times. And then that needs to be multiplied by what's in the parentheses. So the first thing I have is 3x to the second. And the next thing I have is 2x. And the next thing I have is negative 5. Okay, so now before I multiply, I got to make sure all my x variables have power. So that's to the second, that's to the second, that's to the second, and this x here would be a 1. That's the second. Now, I had a lot of people yesterday trying to put a 1 here. No, there's no x at all, so don't put a 1, okay? Don't put anything. So again, I times the big numbers, 5 times 3, and that's 15. Now on the x's, we add the powers. 2 plus 2. Here I'll even write it. 2 plus 2, and that's 4. So 15x to the 4th power, that's a 4. Okay, 5 times 2 is 10, and then on the x's, we add the powers. 2 plus 1 is 3, so it's x to the 3rd. And then 5 times negative 5 is negative 25. Then on the x, I just have the 2, and I don't add anything. Okay, so I have x to the 4th, x third, x to the 2nd. So I write those out with pluses. So 15x to the 4th plus 10x to the 3rd, because none of my powers are the same. They're all different. So I just write it out. Okay, and that's my answer. All right, now, when you get bored of doing these examples, you can turn and do the assignment. Okay, so I have a polynomial here, 3x plus 1, and then the operation, if I don't see one, is automatically a multiplication. And then I have 2x minus 5. So what I do is I circle the 3x. Forget about the 1 here for a second. So I draw a rainbow from 3x to 2x and 3x to negative 5. So I just drew true rainbows from that 3x. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to write 3x times and 3x times. And we're going to take it times 2x. And then we're going to take it times negative 5. Okay, and then the 3x is finished, but now I repeat the same process with the positive 1. So how many rainbows did I just draw from that positive 1? I drew 2. So I write 1, 1, times. So I'm going to be taking, again, 1 times 2x and 1 times negative 5. You just repeat the same things. Okay, now before we find these products, we need to make sure all of our x's have powers in multiplication. So that's a 1, that's a 1. Don't put a 1 there. There's no x there. Don't put a 1 there. There's no x, but right here we need one. And don't put anything here because there's no x variables. So 3 times 2 is 6. Then on x, we got 1 plus 1, which is 2. Okay, 6x to the 2nd. 3 times negative 5. Again, here I'll even show you. You multiply the big numbers, negative 15. Then on x, you just have the 1, and that's it. You don't add anything to it. Then 1 times 2 is 2. Then on the x, you just have the 1. Okay. Then 1 times negative 5 is negative 5. Now, you got two powers that are identical, okay, right here. So you need to draw out blanks. The second power is the highest. So blank x to the 2nd plus blank x plus blank. So for x to the 2nd, I just have the 6. So I'm going to write that down and then cross it out. And then we need to add, for the x, that means x to first, we need to add negative 15 plus 2, and that's negative 13. And after those have been added, we cross that out. And then we have negative 5 for the constant, and that's the answer. Okay, on my next problem, I got 2x plus 3 and then times. Now remember, when you're timesing, every x needs a number in front of it in this part. So that would be a 1. Okay, so first I pay attention to the 2x. I distribute it to 1x and negative 5. So how many rainbows did I just draw? I drew 2. So 2x, 2x. And we're timesing it to 1x and negative 5. So 1x, negative 5. Cross that out. And now I got my positive 3 to 1x and 3 to negative 5. Again, 2 rainbows with the 3. 3 is distributed twice. 1x, negative 5. Okay, now before we find these products, I need to make sure my x's have powers. So this would have a 1. There's an x, it would have a 1. Here's an x, it would have a 1. And I don't have an x here, so don't put a 1. Don't have an x here, but I have one here. And I don't even have an x in that product at all. So 2 times 1 is 2. Then on the x's, you take 1 plus 1, which is 2. 2x to the 2nd. 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. Then on x, it's just to the 1, and that's it. 3 times 1 is 3, and then we got an x, you got a 1, that's it. 3 times negative 5 is negative 15, and then I don't even have an x at all there. Okay, now I have two powers that are identical with these 1s here, so I'm going to circle those. And my highest power is to the second, so blank x to the second plus blank x plus blank. If you have powers that are identical, you need to draw your blanks. So for x second, we got 2. We can cross that out. X means x to the first, so I have these two, negative 10 and positive 3. So I add negative 10 plus 3, negative 7. Okay, and then for constants, we have just a negative 15. That's the answer. Okay, next one, 6x minus 3, and then the operations times, if I don't see it, and then 4x minus 1. So with times, you need to draw rainbows. So I got 6x to 4x and 6, not to negative 3. Okay, you don't do that. If they're in the same parentheses, you don't draw a rainbow. So I have two rainbows coming out of the 6x. That's why I wrote it down twice. Then we're going to times it by 4x, and then we're going to times it by negative 1. Okay, and then we can cross out the 6x. And then negative 3, two rainbows from that, so negative 3, remember it's negative. And then I distribute it to 4x and to negative 1. Okay, my x is 1, 1, 1 and nothing, nothing and 1, and then nothing at all. So 6 times 4 is 24. Then on x, you take 1 plus 1, and that's 2. So 24x to the second. 6 times negative 1 is negative 6. Then on the x, it's just a 1. And then negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. Then on the x, it's just a 1. Negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3, and then we don't have to worry about any exponents there. So I have identical powers of x here, so I circle those because those are going to be added. But my highest is a second, so blank x a second plus blank x plus blank. So x second, you just have the 24. For x, you're looking at x to the first, so I add negative 6 to negative 12. That's negative 18. Okay, and then negative 3 times negative 1 is 3, so I just put 3. That's what it multiplies into. Okay, next problem. I've got x minus 8 times 5x minus 1. Again, before you times, you got to make sure your x's are covered with numbers in front. So I got the 1x, and I need to distribute it to 5x and then to negative 2. So I got 1x times, and then 5x and negative 2. Okay, and then that takes care of the 1x. Now the negative 8 gets distributed. So there's two rainbows. Okay, so negative 8 times 5x and then negative 2. So x, 1, 1, 1, nothing, nothing, and 1, and then nothing at all. So 1 times 5 is 5. Then on the x, we got to take 1 plus 1. It's multiplication, so that's 2. Then 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. Then on the x, it's just to the 1. You don't have to add anything. Negative 8 times 5 is negative 40. Then on the x, it's just to the 1. You don't have to add anything. And that's positive 16, no x. Now again, we have identical x powers with 1 and 1. So that means we circle that and we're plussing those. X second is the highest, so blank x second plus blank x plus blank. So x second, we have a 5. Then the x is negative 2 plus negative 40 is negative 42. And then you have your 16. Okay, backside. You can work whenever you want. 8x plus 7 times, you got to make sure you know the operation between two parentheses, and it's times, so we circle the first. And I distribute 8 to 2, so it's going to be 8, and then 8 to 3, so we're going to have 8x twice as a factor, and then times 2x, and times 3. We'll figure out what those equal here in a moment. I got to get the rest of the distribution written out. Then positive 7 to 2x, positive 7 to 3. So 7, 7. Then we're timesing that to 2x, and we're timesing it to positive 3. There's no negatives at all. Okay, so x, you got 1, 1, 1, nothing, nothing, and 1, nothing, and nothing. So 8 times 2 is 16. Then on x, we got 1 plus 1, and that's 2. 8 times 3 is 24. Then for x, you just got 1. 7 times 2 is 14. Then on x, you just have the 1. And then 7 times 3 is 21. Again, in the middle here, you got identical powers. So those are like terms. They need to be added. So the highest power is a 2. So blank x second plus blank x plus blank. So for x second, I got 16. Then for x, I add these two. 24 plus 14 is 38. Then you have 21. Okay, next problem. Negative x plus 1 and times 3x to the second plus 1. This one's a little bit different than some of the others. Okay, so I need to make sure every x has a number in front before I multiply. And that x has a 3. Okay, so I take my negative 1 and distribute it to every number in the second parentheses. So how many rainbows did I just draw? I drew 2. So negative 1x, negative 1x, and then we have two things to multiply by. The 3x to the second and the positive 1. Okay, and then we're done with the negative 1x. Now we got to distribute our positive 1 to each of these. So positive 1 times 3x to the second, and then positive 1 again times 1. So, okay, you got a 1 and a 2, a 1 and then nothing. Don't put anything there. Nothing, and then 2, and then nothing at all. Okay, so negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. Then on the x's, I've got 1 plus 2. And that's 3. Negative 1 times positive 1 is negative 1. Then on the x's, you just have the 1. Okay? Don't add to it because that's the only one I have. Then 1 times 3 is 3. Then on x, you have your 2. That's it. Don't add to it. And then 1 times 1 is 1. There's no x at all, so I don't need to worry about any powers. Now, all of these are different, okay? 3, 1, 2, and then nothing. So they're all different. So we have to write we're not going to draw blanks in. I have no need for that. So I just write negative 3x to the third. After third comes second, so that would be the 3x to the second. You can cross those out as you write them. And then my x to first, so plus negative 1x to the first. That's like x. And then plus 1. So there was nothing to add. So I ended up with 4 terms, and what caused that is that the fact that we had a second power on one of the x's. I don't think that happens on the assignment, though. So negative 3x plus 10 times 2x minus 1. So first thing, negative 3. We have to distribute that to the 2 and the negative 1. So I just made 2 rainbows from that term. So negative 3x, negative 3x. We're going to multiply that by 2x and negative 1. Okay, and then we're done with that. Now we distribute the 10 to these, positive 10. So positive 10, positive 10. We're going to be multiplying that to 2x. We're going to be multiplying that to negative 1. Okay, make sure all the x's have powers. So there's an x, needs a 1. There's an x, needs a 1. There's an x, needs a 1. That doesn't have an x, don't put anything. That doesn't have an x, don't put anything. That has an x, that needs a 1. And that doesn't have an x, that doesn't have an x. Okay, so negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Now on the x, you got 1 plus 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Negative 3 times negative 1 is 3. It's positive. Negative times a negative is always a positive. Then on x, you just have the 1. Don't add anything to it, because that's all we had. 10 times 2 is 20. Then on the x, you just have the 1. Don't add anything to it. And here, 10 times negative 1 is negative 10. Now, do you see x at all in here? No, so you don't have any powers to worry about. So we ended up with two identical powers here. So that will be plus, and then the highest we have is to the second. So blank x to the second plus blank x plus blank. So x second, I have negative 6. And then for x, that's when we need to add these two. 3 plus 20 is 23x. And then negative 10. Okay, and then the last problem. And then also it's times. So that has a 2, but this x would need a 1. So I distribute 2 to negative 1 and 2 to 3. You have to have a number there to distribute it to. So I got 2x, 2x, and we got two multiplications to make. And we're going to times it to negative 1x, and we're going to times it to positive 3. And that takes care of that. Now I also have negative 7. I did two rainbows, so negative 7, negative 7. I'm going to times that to negative 1x, and I'm going to times that to positive 3. Now make sure you find your x's. Here's an x, it needs a power, a 1. Here's an x, needs a power, a 1. Here's an x, it needs a power, a 1. There's no x there, don't put anything. There's no x there, don't put anything. That x needs a power, and there's no x here and no x here. So 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Then on the x's, you add the powers. 1 plus 1, and that's 2. Negative 2x is second. 2 times 3 is 6. Then for x, you just got the 1. Don't add to it. That's the only power I have. Negative 7 times negative 1 is 7. There's x. That would be to the 1. And negative 7 times 3 is negative 21. You don't even have x, so don't worry about it. Okay, I got identical powers here, so I need to add. So x to the second is the highest power. So we start our expression with that. And I've got negative 2 for x to the second. And then for x, I've got 6 plus 7, that's 13. And then I have negative 21. What really is not cool is when we have to take this and get back to here. Okay, but that's not for a long time yet.